Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Our Thoughts on This. This is episode 2. I'm Alex.
I'm Jason.
I'm Fakari.
And I'm Ali.
And today we're going to be talking about The Flash and how much CGI is too much CGI. And yeah. So, jumping right into The Flash. The Flash just came out this week. Came out on Friday. And so it's fresh in everybody's mind who's seen it. I know Jason has. I don't believe Ali or Trakari have, but I think they can still give some good opinions on what they've seen online. Yeah. So let's start off with Jason. What did you think about it?
This is by far, excuse me, I just burped a little bit. This is by far the worst superhero movie I've ever seen.
I don't know if I'd say the worst. I think Black Adam is worse.
No, I'd rather watch Punisher Warzone than any second of this whole movie. I was disappointed in the action. I was disappointed in the acting. Shout out to Sasha Kaye. She's the best part of that movie.
No, not even close. Not even close.
But yeah, shout out to Sasha Kaye. Yeah, I don't understand what the plot was. I really don't understand. You know what? Which season of The Flash had Savitar in it?
I can't remember, but that is a really good point to bring up. Because in this one, from Barry's unexplained ability to name every single thing that happens to him immediately, he can't come up with a better name other than Dark Flash.
Yeah. It's literally the Savitar plot, but done 10 times worse.
Oh yeah,
well, the
for sure.
plot was already pretty shitty too. So
yes, it was. For sure. But like as soon as he travels back in time, and then he meets younger Barry. Okay, let's give a spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't seen The Flash. I think that should have been self-explanatory, but we are going to completely spoil this movie.
Don't worry. Everything that was cool that happened in the movie, they also showed in the trailers.
That is true.
You're not seeing anything.
That.
So here's a little brief rundown of what happens in this film. Barry realizes accidentally that he can travel through time, and he believes that he can go back in time in order to save his mother. This is heavily based off of the Flashpoint series from the comics and the movie that was made by the DC animated universe. And what? You don't think so?
I was just gonna ask, like, from what I've seen, like, is it really based on Flashpoint?
It is. It is unfortunately based on Flashpoint.
It's very loosely based.
Extremely loosely based, but based on Flashpoint.
It seems like it takes one general the concept of going back in time and saving his mom, and then everything else is kind of just whatever.
Yeah, I guess. Well, Barry starts running so fast that he accidentally goes backwards in time through, I think it's a few seconds. Is that what it is? I can't remember.
Yeah.
And then
seconds.
And then he decides, oh, well, I did seconds before. Let's push it back 15 years or whatever. And then he starts traveling backwards in time and through what he immediately calls the Chrono Bowl for no reason whatsoever. It's immediately once he travels back in time and meets his younger self, he goes, oh, I just traveled through the Chrono Bowl. And I'm sitting there in the theater going, what the hell's the Chrono Bowl?
Why wouldn't they just call it the Speed Force?
He does call it the Speed Force. He calls it this. He talks about the Speed Force, the Chrono Bowl, and there's one other term that he uses, and I can't remember what it is right now. But it's like everything that happens to him, he just makes up a name immediately, and there's no really explanation for why he's naming it these things. They're just like, oh, that sounds cool. I'm gonna name it this.
Also, this movie heavily relies on the fact that you already understand who the Flash is, what his powers are, and that he's a scientist. If you don't know anything about those facts going into this movie, the movie does not explain it at all.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you haven't seen Justice League, then why would you watch The Flash?
Maybe because Justice League came out nearly, 8 years ago?
That's a good point.
This is supposed to be the sequel to that movie.
That is a
directly in the timeline.
Yeah, it's just like it's titled The Flash. I can see how someone would be like, especially if you don't keep up with that type of stuff. Okay, so this is just a Flash movie, like so.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into why this is such a terrible movie. All right. First of all, despite Jason's love for Sasha Kaye, she has no point in being Supergirl. It truly felt to me like this movie was solely intended for Henry Cavill to be playing Superman, except when DC pissed him off and they realized that they needed to pivot, they went find replace in the script, and every time it said Superman, wrote Supergirl. There is nothing in this movie that is special to her being Supergirl.
No, not at all. This movie, first off, they do set up the fact that because he technically created a new universe, people will look different, but it doesn't change the fact that events happen differently. So like, it's very weird. It's very weird in this sense that like he goes back in time, changes the past, and now there's instead of Superman, there's Supergirl, but it doesn't explain the fact that like what did they call it in this movie? What did they call it? It's not absolute points. That's multiverse of madness.
No, yeah. I believe it was an absolute point, wasn't it?
I forget what they call it. They call it something similar to that.
Yeah.
Or inevitable points. I think they called it inevitable points. So like they the idea that Zod invades in 2014 is like an inevitable point.
2013.
But 2013, I'm sorry, 2013 is an inevitable point. But everything else can change. Yeah, it's a canon event. That's such a better term.
It is.
Can we just decide on what we're gonna call these things? I much prefer canon points.
That brings up a really great point that I want to talk about. This is a multiverse movie. However, I think it is the worst attempt at a multiverse movie, and the entire superhero genre has been way too oversaturated by multiverse movies through everything that Marvel's done in the last 3 years that I just didn't care about it. What did you think, Jason?
Well, I mean, excuse me. It has zero consequences or stakes because they immediately introduce the idea that he can just go back and change everything if he wants to.
Except for the inevitable points for whatever reason.
Except for the inevitable points, which it doesn't make sense that Supergirl dying is an inevitable point because in the original timeline, Superman doesn't die in that fight. Anyways,
That's a good point.
then yeah, and then it doesn't set up the new universe at all. The DCU, it doesn't set that up at all. So this movie literally has zero consequences because it resets the whole universe, but it doesn't show us.
It does not reset the whole universe. We'll get into that. We'll get into that. That's something I'm really mad about.
It has no point in existing.
That's true.
Very true. This movie has no point. It's like the Aquaman movies. What you know why nobody watches the Aquaman movies? Because they don't mean anything.
Because
they have
Chinese.
No greater impact. And they're not Chinese. Yes.
The only reason. No, sorry. Go ahead, Trakari.
I was gonna say it seems like the Flash overall, because like I've seen stuff where like just what the story was supposed to be about has changed so much. Like it seems like the whole movie is just a relic of somebody else's idea, and they just did it because they've already wasted too much money on it. Like they should, like, if they were gonna cancel any movie, it should have been this. You know what I'm saying? So maybe
they should have canceled Batgirl. I fully stand by that decision to cancel Batgirl. It looked terrible.
Hey, it looked hot garbage, but I bet you Batgirl would have had more ramifications for the universe with anything that happened in the Flash movie. I can promise you that.
Yeah. I just want to clarify my Chinese point for a moment. The only reason I said that is because Aquaman is consistently the lowest performing DC movie in the United States. However, it is the highest performing DC movie in China. In case you didn't know that, yes. It has brought in more money than almost any other DC movie, I think, combined. That's why it's got close to the $1 billion mark, just based on China alone.
Good for Jason Momoa.
I know. The Chinese love him.
Yeah, has Jason Momoa ever been in anything that's considered good?
Game of Thrones.
Besides the Dune movie? I didn't even know he was in Game of Thrones.
He was in the first 2 seasons.
What was he? I feel like he's been in something that wasn't bad.
He was in Conan. That was bad. He was in Fast 10. That was also bad.
What was he been in? He was. Oh boy. I'm looking.
IMDb. Can we get a sponsorship?
Yes, please.
Wow. Boy. He was in Johnson Family Vacation. I remember that movie when I was a kid.
I do not know what that is.
This is the first time I'm hearing about it too.
Yeah, maybe you're right. It's not looking good for my boy Jason.
Yep.
Yeah. Nothing.
Okay.
He's gonna be in a Minecraft movie.
Yes, he is. Minecraft movie coming out next year. So excited. It's coming out the same day as something else. Oh gosh, what's it coming out the same day as? It's going to be an Oppenheimer Barbie situation. I can't remember. Oh my. I think it's the same day as Huh?
I'm going to look it up right now.
When is it?
For some reason, I'm thinking it's like I'm thinking it's scheduled like the same time as the next Mission Impossible, but I'm not certain on that right now.
2025. Movies coming out in April. Oh my god, if I could type 2025. Untitled Disney sequel. That's all it says.
That's it. I can't believe I can't remember it right now, but it is coming out the same day as something else. And obviously we're going to see the Minecraft movie first.
Absolutely.
Yes. Of course.
In the same vein as the Barbie movie.
That's right. Yeah, Barbie comes first.
Well, no, because Barbie is a dessert, my guy. You have to.
You're going to see Oppenheimer
first. Eat your veggies.
I want to see Japan get bombed first, and then to cleanse the negativity from my spirit, I'm gonna watch Barbie.
I see.
I don't think I could do that in the same day.
What do you mean? No, you go. You don't leave the theater.
Yeah, that's
You're there for at least 6 hours.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
You think the Barbie movie is gonna be better than the Flash?
Oh, for sure.
I have no doubt. No doubt. You know what? I think the One Piece live action movie can be better than the Flash.
It's a movie? I saw the trailer. I didn't know if it was a show or a movie.
Oh, I thought it was just stills.
It might be a show. You know, it doesn't matter because it's gonna suck, but it's gonna be better than the Flash.
Apparently there's some people who are like excited for it, and I was like, man, did y'all not see what happened to Cowboy Bebop? But okay.
I don't think Cowboy Bebop was that bad.
Okay, I'm not. Okay.
We'll talk about that later.
All right, back to the Flash. The Flash did not reset the universe. That's the thing that pissed me off so much. James Gunn lied to me, and I feel betrayed. James Gunn said that the Flash sets up the new DCU. However, in the end, where they could have had the perfect opportunity for where Barry's on the phone and he's like, "Oh, Bruce, I'm so glad to hear your voice." Which, first of all, how the hell did he not realize it wasn't Ben Affleck's voice? Second of all, he's like, "Oh, Bruce, I'm so glad to hear your voice." And the car pulls up and someone steps out of the car and their face is obstructed for a little bit. And then we see George Clooney. And I'm so upset.
Is George Clooney, and he immediately disrespects Barry, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he does. He immediately disrespects Barry. And it would have been the perfect opportunity to cut the stupid cameo by George Clooney that no one wanted and instead just keep Bruce's face obscured the whole time and just show Barry's reaction of being like, who the heck is this guy? It would have been perfect for setting up the fact that Barry is now in the new DCU. However, they used a stupid cameo. Or there's the other option on this one, is that James Gunn has decided to make Clooney the new Batman for the DCU, and I hope not.
Well, James Gunn also, if I remember correctly, confirmed that he hasn't cast anybody for the new Batman movie, but that Andy Muschietti, I don't know how you pronounce that,
Yeah.
is
Who knows?
directing that movie, which is a terrible
Yes.
idea.
Terrible idea.
What all has he worked on?
He did It Chapter 1 and 2.
Those movies are good.
Which is why Stephen King so weirdly overpraised it, because I saw Stephen King's comments on Twitter of like, this is the greatest movie like he's ever seen in a long time, and I was like, Stephen King said this? And then I realized that It Chapter 1 and 2 is the highest grossing Stephen King movie of all time, and I realized, oh, that's why he likes Andy Muschietti.
Oh, is that how you say that?
I believe so.
No disrespect. I'm not gonna say your name that way. I'm gonna call you Muschetti. That's disrespectful. I do not care.
It's Juneteenth. We can do what we want.
It's my day. It's my day.
Hold on now. All right now.
Today is my day, and I get to do what I want. Yeah. So we already know that. First off, I hope they don't cast Ezra Miller as the new Flash. Ezra Miller, besides very crazy antics with just abusing random people for no reason.
Starting a cult.
Starting a cult, kidnapping people.
Assaulting
breaking
minors,
into people's
maybe?
homes and
Do we know why they even had him stay in this movie?
I think because it was filmed.
Because it was already shot and filmed.
Yeah,
they should have just redid that shit.
They already redid one of the faces onto the stupid body double who had the different face shape than Ezra Miller, so you could immediately tell who was the one that was replaced in each scene.
Yeah. They should have done what they did with Henry Cavill's mustache.
Oh God,
that would have been perfect.
No.
Yeah,
but
exactly, bro. Circular type deal.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know. I would have got about the movie and walked away. I thought about it several times. Legitimately. But if I had seen that the CGI was on the same level as painted over face Henry Cavill, I would have got up and left. Immediately.
Yeah. Obviously, I have not seen this film yet, but I just if you're starting, I don't know, man. From what you're telling me, the plot seems like a huge mess. So my thought is why would you not just start over? Because most people, the average person does not know about Flashpoint or Crises or any of that stuff. So why would you not just say, we're starting over, guys?
Which I mean, hopefully they are.
The end. Maybe, but if let's say George Clooney is Batman now, it's just why do they keep relying on nostalgia to bring people in instead of just good stories and stuff?
I know.
Well, it's because the people in the modern scene who write these movies aren't fans of the genre. So I bet you I could probably say that the person who wrote the Flash movie probably has never read a Flash comic book.
I think it's
doesn't
three
really
people.
Okay, so the 3 people who wrote this movie probably never read a Flash comic book. I probably just went to the DC Wiki, looked up key points about the character, and that's how they base their whole writing off of. Or they watched the Flash TV show, and that's what they want to decide to base everything off of. And
I don't believe, because the first season of the Flash is not bad. So
the first 2 seasons of the Flash are not bad. Everything after that.
Yeah, the third season's where it gets crazy.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
You can definitely tell that they watched the last season, season 8. That's what they based different. They
watched the Avatar season.
That's right. They said, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
Yeah, let's do this again.
This is the best thing to ever be done in fiction. We're gonna adapt Flashpoint and popular media for the 4th time in 10 years, and we're gonna do it worse. Yeah. We're gonna do it worse.
I just feel like when people try to adapt, I feel like everything besides the animated adaptation, because I feel like the animated adaptation is not trying to well, I know it does set up the new line of DC movies that happened afterwards, but I feel like it also is just here's the story that we're adapting, here's this comic book stuff, because that's what I feel like a lot of.
I actually rewatched that movie yesterday because I was like, I'm in a Flash mood. Let me rewatch Flashpoint.
It's so good.
The Flash, yeah, it hits a lot of the key major points
Yeah.
of the comic.
Yeah.
It kind of focuses in on that. Is it a perfect adaptation? No, but I mean, you can't get a perfect adaptation because if you wanted a perfect adaptation, just go read the original thing, you know. But it really hits on the points of what makes a Flashpoint story great is that there's consequences to Barry's actions. But in this whole movie, there are no consequences to anything Barry does. He faces no real consequences for any of his actions.
Yep.
In fact, he gets off scot-free with everything. There is no reverse Flash fight. There is no Speed Force demon coming after him. There's none of this. There's none of this. No after effects to anything that he does.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I do. I want to hear your opinion on something, Jason.
Yeah.
How would you have felt if instead of Michael Keaton playing Bruce Wayne, if he played Thomas Wayne?
Even if they had made him Thomas Wayne, I don't think it could have saved the fact that this movie is just a garbage all the way around.
I agree. It is bad, but it would have been closer to the original because the only reason that they have Keaton play Batman is because he's played him in the past, and they explain it as like, oh, as soon as you like time travel and like create a branch create a node in the timeline. Which, first of all, how the hell does Batman know this? He's just like, you time traveled? It was, you time traveled? You know, common misconception is that you go back in time and everything before it stays the same. Actually, this is what happens. And Barry's just like, okay, cool. And Batman never explains how the hell he learned that.
Well, he knows because he's Batman. Exactly.
He's the smartest man on Earth. Like,
exactly, man.
Obviously,
the world's greatest detective.
I mean,
but still,
we don't know if Mr. Griffin is
so.
Yes, that's true. But still, the only reason that Keaton played him was because he played Batman in the past, and they explain it as in, as soon as you create the node in the timeline, that like anything can change. So Batman can be a different person and like people look different, and they say that. However, throughout the entirety of the movie, the only person that looks different in any of the timelines is Batman. Nobody else looks different.
Nobody.
I mean, I assume A, it's because they couldn't get Christian Bale, but B, it's just like I feel like this movie feels like it thinks it needs to explain stuff to people who don't care. Like, nobody cares. It's the same thing with the Spider-Man or the Across the Spider-Verse movies, where it's like, why do all the Spider-Men look different if they're all just Peter Parker? Who cares? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Talk about missed opportunities. The fact that they didn't have Christopher Daniel Barnes, aka 90s animated series Spider-Man, in the Spider-Verse movie is a terrible idea, because I would have just loved to hear I'll chase you to the ends of the earth, shocker! I would have just loved to hear that. That is a crazy missed opportunity. Movie would have been a 13 out of 45 if they had done that.
A 13?
Yeah, 13.
What is the scale?
13 out of 45? That's terrible. That's like a 25%.
Don't worry about it. Math doesn't make sense. Math doesn't make sense.
I thought you liked the movie. What?
Like, you're focusing too much on my words and not my actions.
Okay. All right.
I forgot where I was going with it mid-sentence.
I don't know. Back to the Flash. I think that's pretty much all I have story-wise, because the story itself is so jumbled up that it doesn't really matter. It's just a terrible interpretation of Flashpoint. What I would really love to talk about is Christopher Reeve.
He showed up?
Unfortunately, yes, he did.
Is he in the wheelchair?
Yeah, no, they willed out his corpse personally for this movie.
They CGI puppeted the dead man's corpse to act like Superman one more time, and it was really uncomfortable.
It was really uncomfortable because they all looked like plastic. You know what? The best way to describe it is it looked like a Ubisoft video game.
That's like, okay. I mean, I assume they got permission from his estate, but like still.
I mean, yeah, throw money at anybody, you'll get permission. It's like, should they have? That's the better question.
Well, You know what's even worse was CGI Nick Cage
Oh
Superman.
my god, that was so bad.
Did you believe?
Apparently Nick Cage filmed that. So why did they go through and redo it in CGI?
Dude, I don't know.
Yeah,
Nick Cage just wanted a paycheck.
For people who
Well,
don't know, Nick Cage is a massive Superman fan, and between Superman Returns with Brandon Routh and Man of Steel with Henry Cavill, Nick Cage was set to star in a Superman movie directed by Kevin Smith. However, that was initially scrapped like before it even reached the production phase. But in order to pay homage to that possibility, Nick Cage shows up in a very brief cameo where he fights a giant
yeah,
spider.
interesting
He's
stuff, man.
he's the only one of the cameos who actually does something too.
That's right.
You want to know what's like crazy? Like, because I feel like the only reason that even exists is because of that one picture of Nick Cage in the suit. But
Yeah.
like,
Oh, for sure.
the Justice League Mortal, the other canceled super movie or whatever. If there was pictures of that, oh my god, we would never see the end of it.
Oh no.
Here's Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern again. No.
Yeah.
No, and people would act like it was the best movie to ever be made that was never made too.
Yeah.
That's how they act. They're like, this is the
Justice
best movie
League
to ever
Mortal
be
doesn't
made.
sound good either.
Yeah. But there was just way too much CGI, especially in that like whole Chrono Bowl sequence. The thing that made no sense to me at all is why the hell in the Chrono Bowl did they choose to go through and make everything CGI when it's very clearly a character model of an actual still from a movie. They show Jason Momoa throwing a trident. They show Henry Cavill as Superman like during the Justice League scene where he first wakes up from death essentially, and he's attacking the Justice League. Like they show those exact moments, except they've recreated them in CGI, and they've recreated them very poorly. Why wouldn't they just pull the plate image and say, "Here you go. You can actually see something that doesn't look like crap"?
Well,
yeah, these are questions to ask. These are questions that I'm not in charge of making.
Well, the simple answer is because it had, according to what I just looked up, it had the lowest budget at $220 million, which is still a lot of money, but it was less than the budget for Justice League, less than the budget for Batman v Superman, and less than the budget of Man of Steel.
So you're telling me that because it had a lower budget, it makes sense for them to spend the time and money to create these scenes digitally instead of just using actual footage?
I feel like what they did was they wanted to do more, and then they ran out of money, and and Warner Brothers was like, "Look, we're gonna sell the whole company, and we're just gonna cut it off. We're just gonna call it."
I think a lot of this also plays into the fact that this movie was not supposed to be like a Flashpoint movie. I don't think, right? Like that wasn't what it was always supposed to be, right? Like it only became that once they realized, okay, what we're doing isn't working, and we need to start over. And
no, I believe this was filmed way before James Gunn took over.
But still, was it always supposed to be like the Flashpoint movie, even before when they thought people?
I think so.
Well, no, because it was originally announced in 2014.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
And it was announced in 2014 for release in 2018. So I feel like it was supposed to be a direct sequel to a Justice League movie, but because of all the failures of Warner Brothers management, that they just decided, here, let's do something that's easy, that we can do really quickly, and they just decided on a Flashpoint storyline because it's, unfortunately, would you say it's the most famous Flash storyline?
I mean, yeah. What else is there?
It's the most known.
Yeah, But besides the one where he goes to Earth 2, this is the most famous Flash storyline ever. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense why they chose to do it. I just think that they could have done it a lot better.
Or not even done it at all.
I mean, yeah, but if you're going to make a Flash movie, what are you going to do? Unless you want to bring Zack Snyder back and actually have him fulfill his vision of making the Doomsday and actually paying off the whole time travel in, what was it, Batman v Superman? Where the Flash shows up to Bruce in his dream. Like, we never got that answer.
While obviously this is one of the Flash more wanted, the Flash does have good story. Like I feel like you easily could have made a good Gorilla Grodd movie if you wanted to, or like even done the Reverse Flash if you wanted to. Like if you still wanted that time travel element, their stories with
Well,
Reverse Flash.
they rely on Reverse Flash too much for everything. He was in every season of the Flash TV show.
That's true.
Like they rely on the Reverse Flash.
But
like,
how many people are still watching the Flash though? By season 9, how many people were still watching the Flash though?
Probably
Not me.
nobody.
Not me.
I know a couple people
They
who
lost
are still
me.
watching it.
That's crazy.
I stopped after season 1.
Really?
This wasn't it for you?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
That's how I felt about Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I was more thinking towards the fact that it's like, oh man, the Snyderverse, one of my favorite things that never happened. Is that they were
Oh God,
really
please no.
I love the Snyderverse. I love the Snyderverse. Anyways, I feel like if you're gonna do a Flash storyline, and what you should not ever start with Flashpoint.
Yeah.
You should start with origin. You should start
the same
with
as like.
Well, I mean, they show the Flash's origin through the Flash basically grooming his younger self in order to become the Flash.
Which is like that's not that far from what Ezra Miller would really do.
I know, that's why I used the term. But
oh boy.
But I think that they had a good idea in order to tell Flashpoint and tell a Flash origin story in one movie. I just think that idea really poorly came across.
But it's just like, I feel like those concepts that are so antithetical to each other, because it's just like Flashpoint is like not the end. Well, it kind of is the end for a lot of characters, at least. Like it's because like once we go into the New 52 after Flashpoint, like Barry, like it's a different thing. Like, you know, you get Black Wally West, you get a lot of different stuff for the Flash. You know, his Rose Gallery becomes not completely different, but how they become who they are is generally very different. You know, and Flash's origin, like I feel like you can't. I was gonna say it's kind of like, what was it? No Way Home, is that the third one? Where it's like, okay, Spider-Man is now going to the Spider-Verse. It's the third one. Like you can't. That's like the end. You can't just do that yet.
It's like going from Man of Steel, like watching Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and even Justice League. It's like, whoa, where did Aquaman show up from? Wait a minute, why is he here? Cyborg, what? You didn't build on this at all.
And I do have a question though. Before I do start.
Oh yeah, what's your question?
Is Ezra Miller's Flash? Is it actually Barry Allen or is it Wally West?
Ezra Miller's Flash?
They call him Barry.
They call him
no, but is the character because Grant Gustin's Flash is Wally West essentially, you know? So like, is it really like Barry Allen's character, or are they just calling him Barry Allen while adapting Wally West's kind of personality for the character?
You know, I would say it's neither. It's Ezra Miller running fast is the character he plays, because he doesn't do very good acting.
Yeah,
he doesn't act like Barry Allen. You know what? He acts like a socially inept autistic person. Like I don't know how else to describe it. He acts like he has the most debilitating form of autism, where if he has to talk to somebody, he just shuts down and explodes. Because that's all that happens throughout that whole movie.
How does he talk to Iris West? Is she in the movie?
She is in the movie. Finally.
Bro, Iris West is like, hey, would you like to go on a date with me, Barry Allen? And Barry Allen is like, I'm going to go travel back in time. What are you talking about?
In the middle of the date, he's like, actually, gotta go. I'm going to go save my mom.
It's like the most out-of-pocket intense thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, is there anything else you have to say about The Flash, Jason?
Cinemark movies. I would like a refund.
Okay.
Well, it's not their fault.
No, it's 100% their fault.
Okay.
I'm blaming it.
They shouldn't have put the poster up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if not, then I would love to lead into our next topic of how much CGI is too much CGI, and at what point does a movie basically just become animated. And so I want to start this off. I have a couple examples, and I want to hear your guys' opinion on whether or not these are animated or live action films. All right?
All right.
So, first off, I want to start with something that could be a little tricky. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Is that animated? Is that live action? What is it?
Well, I think like that movie specifically, like it's both. right? Like I think that movie specifically, like it's blurring the lines between what it is and isn't. Like well, I guess we'll see with what other movies you name. But with something like Avatar, like that movie, it's majority of it is animated. It's not like on real sets. It's like behind a green screen. So like that's what I would say. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is like very distinctly in between both of those. That's just
Okay. Okay. So leading more into something that's not very distinctly both, what would you consider the Transformers films?
live action.
I would say live action.
Okay. Despite the majority of the cast being animated?
I feel like it's got that perfect mix going on, where there's large animated characters, but they still have enough real people in it to make it like that.
Yeah.
That
And
50-50.
practical
Yeah,
And
there's
effects
still
as well.
enough real stuff there. You know what I'm saying? Like the sets are still real. There's still people there. The set pieces are
So
actually
you're saying
happening.
that in order for it to be live action, there has to be a filmed element. It can't be computer generated.
I would think so. Maybe like a little bit more specific, but like I think generally that's kind of key.
Okay. Because my next example is Into the Spider-Verse. We can all say that's purely animation, right? But Across the Spider-Verse had live action elements in it, but it's still animation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that movie had a live action scene. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I would say it would have to be like a majority of it has to be recorded, like film, not computer generated, to be live action.
Okay. That makes sense.
I feel that's gonna bite me in the butt later on, but
no. I agree. And so Trakari already brought this up, but Avatar, the majority of that is not filmed. However, it's still a live action movie. Specifically, the first Avatar has a lot more live action elements than the second Avatar, yet they're both considered live action movies. Do you think it's the intent of the film itself from the very beginning that determines whether or not it's live action or animated?
I guess what do you mean?
Well, I think I can give an answer.
Okay.
I don't know if it has much to do with the intent, but maybe much more to do with how they set it up. So like we'll use the example of Across the Spider-Verse, right? Now Donald Glover does show up in that scene, but he's a cameo character. He doesn't appear for the majority of the movie. He's in and out.
Mm-hmm.
He's in and out. But when you talk about something like Avatar, especially the first one, which had a lot more real people in it, I would say it's still more of that mix because there are real actors doing real actions still in the movie. But then you compare it to Avatar: Way of the Water, where I would assume that movie is probably 99% CGI. So
true, except for all the scenes with Spider. Does anybody remember those scenes? I don't think so.
No.
I do remember that one, White Kid with Dreads.
The white kid with dreads. I assumed he was gonna start speaking in a racist Jamaican accent some part throughout the movie.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Bombaclat. But yeah, I kind of think of Avatar: The Way of Water, The Shape of Water, whatever it's called, is the Shape of Water is the movie
Shape
with
of Water, Guillermo del Toro's.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry. The Way of Water is definitely more animated, but I feel like there's this stigma of CGI versus true animation that we're starting to blur the lines in more and more when you see things like Across the Spider-Verse. Because I would say Across the Spider-Verse was all computer generated and imagery, it's all computer generated animation.
Yeah.
That's much more like a classic 2D animated movie and how they do things. Well, you talk about something like Avatar where it's all just, we're animating over stuff. Basically super fancy rotoscoping.
Okay, well I have a question for you then. If you look at Spielberg's The Adventure of Tintin, that was all filmed using motion capture, but the entire thing's animated. They're animating over actual live performances.
I would feel again like that's closer to that's closer to my Avatar example because.
But it's a different classification of film, is it not? Avatar, you're saying, is live action, but Tintin is
I'm saying
specifically
Avatar
animated.
2 is animation. I'm saying Avatar 2 is animation, but there's a stigma attached to it where people won't consider it animation. I think it is purely, it's all animated, even though it's, it's all motion rigs and stuff like that. It's all, what is it, performance capture is what they call it now? Instead of motion capture?
Yes, performance capture.
And when I talk about something like Adventures of Tintin, I feel like that movie, the main difference is the stylization. Because when you watch Avatar, the people aren't stylized. They just look like, well, besides the Na'vi are stylized, obviously, because they're all fictional. But even the parts that are animated with real human people, they are all just look like people. But when we watch something like Adventures of Tintin, even though it's motion captured, they still change for proportions. There's still a layer of artistic, I don't want to say integrity, but artistic vision layered over top, which lines it more up with like when you're talking about like Across the Spider-Verse or traditional 2D animation.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Ali or Chagari, do you have anything to add to that? Do you disagree? Do you agree?
I guess like I think you're bringing some interesting examples, but like I would still call like Tintin an animated film. I guess I would say like because once again like I do feel like I would call it animation just because that's how it's being presented to the audience, and I just think I think largely with a movie like the Avatar, I think a lot of it comes down to how it was pitched originally, because I think if you come out and say I want to make this animated movie and also I want this incredibly large budget, most studios might be like, no. So I think a lot of it just depends on like how. So it's kind of goes back to what you said about intent. So I think a lot of it depends on how it's pitched, but ultimately I think how it's ultimately turns out matters too. I hope that made sense or answered
No, it does.
anything.
It does. It definitely does.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. All right.
Wholeheartedly.
So, do we have a consensus on where the line is drawn? Are we saying that intent during filming is where you determine whether or not it's live action or animated?
I don't know. Like, it's
hard to kind of define that line. Yeah, it's hard to define that line.
With your example, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it was clear that their intent was we want to film that also use animated elements. But something like Avatar, I think obviously not James Cameron, but is it James Cameron, right?
It is James Cameron, yes.
Yeah. So obviously I'm not him, but I feel like his intention is not I'm making an animated film, but I'm just making it a really spectacular film that happens to also use like computer generated elements. So he doesn't really consider it like that, but ultimately how I receive it is as an animated film. So I think intent matters, but yeah, like I said, intent like it varies. And I think a lot of its intent also with how it's received, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. And so would you say the same thing of Who Framed Roger Rabbit towards something like Space Jam?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I would say Space Jam is almost like that Avatar 2 example, because the beginning of the movie is very much a mixture of both, but once he goes down the rabbit hole, into Space Jam is basically Alice in Wonderland when you really think of it.
Yeah.
But once he goes down the rabbit hole and he's in a fully animated universe, then that's more towards Avatar 2. So I think that movie is a perfect example of something that's like perfectly in between.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. All right, those are all the examples I had. Does anybody else want to do they have any examples they want to talk about of where they think the line should be drawn, or no?
Would you consider the original Mask with Jim Carrey animated or live action?
I would consider that live action.
Yeah, I would consider that. That's live action with CGI elements.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of because Who Framed Roger Rabbit's a really good. I know there's been more films kind of like that, but I'm like drawing a blank right now.
Inspector Gadget?
Inspector Gadget is like that. There's the Looney Tunes movies.
Yeah.
There's
Would the Garfield movie count? No, right?
No, I think Garfield movie's live action. Not the new one.
Yeah.
The new one that's coming out next year, I believe, isn't. But
yeah, that one's fully animated. But yeah.
There's would you consider the Sonic movie animated? No. Because literally Sonic 2 Sonic 2 is a really good movie, no disrespect, but Sonic 2, once he leaves, there's parts of that movie that are completely all computer generated.
Yeah.
Okay. And so let's say,
I think that
sorry. Go ahead.
I think you can like that's kind of like how like Transformers is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say. I would still consider it live action with CGI elements.
Okay. And so let's say, if everyone's all right with saying, for the sake of the rest of this episode, that it is the intent that determines whether or not it's live action or animated, how much CGI is too much? Where is that line crossed where something that's intended to be live action is going too far in terms of animated elements?
Any Marvel movie after Winter Soldier. It's literally the example right there.
Well, and why is that?
Yeah.
So there's certain pet peeves of mine I have to Marvel movies. In these more modern Marvel movies, really starting after Winter Soldier, they'll create these really awesome, amazing costumes, and then they'll CGI over them entirely. So I'm thinking of like the Black Panther, the whole final fight scene in that movie, the first one, which was entirely CGI, and they CGI'd over the costume for the majority of that movie. Any of the 3 Spider-Man movies, they CGI'd over that costume entirely. And it's all that nanotech BS, which I hate.
So you would say like when it's being used in unnecessary situations?
When it's being used in a way where it's a waste of resources, you know?
Yeah.
So you compare the first Iron Man movie, Iron Man 1, where there's a practical real Iron Man suit, you kind of get this, you kind of see how it fits in the world. And when you go to something like Endgame, where it's all CGI, and they also have the floating heads problem because everybody's head looks like it's floating above their neckline because it's all CGI'd over top, even though those are all real outfits.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to bring up with like, because like in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, there's still like enhancements to the suit like afterwards digitally. So I was just going to bring that up and to see how you feel about that, you know.
Well, I feel like that's because like we know when Spider-Man's swinging, that's mostly CGI.
Yeah,
and I know that, but that's because people can't swing from the Empire State Building. It's not possible. Well, you probably could.
Right
you probably could, but you might not make it back. But I think a perfect example is Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Right.
Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit was entirely practical. Andrew Garfield had that suit on. And then for some of the fight scenes and swinging scenes, there was actually somebody in like a green screen environment swinging.
Sometimes it wasn't even green screen environment. There are some swinging scenes in the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 where they actually filmed that.
Yeah, exactly. But then you watch something like No Way Home, where everything is CGI'd over it. You start to lose kind of the sense of the, no pun intended, spectacularness of Spider-Man. The amazing feeling you get when you see Spider-Man kind of fades away because it doesn't look like a real person doing it.
Right.
It looks like a video game character doing it.
Right. So we're saying that it becomes too much CGI when it's unnecessary, but there definitely is a place for it, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a place for it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, because it's been around for a while now. Like,
sure.
I think you don't get iconic scenes like what you get in the Matrix without it, you know. So I think like there's a place for it.
Right.
Or even Jurassic Park without CGI.
That's true. One of my favorite examples is the John Wick franchise. All of the gunshots and all of the blood and all of that is entirely generated later, but it helps sell the movie.
Yeah.
Does it? Because John Wick 4 is crazy because they were shooting people point blank and they're like, "Oh, they got bulletproof suits on." I was like, "All right, you lost me."
I think that's 3.
No, I saw 4, and that's literally the beginning.
Oh yes, the beginning one. Yes.
Yeah, beginning, the first 40 minutes of that, or 30 minutes of that movie was video game characters fighting each other.
I think as soon as you get off of that, then they do start taking damage a lot more quickly. Except for the main bad guy, which is unfortunate because that man should have died like 3 times over in that movie.
100%.
But okay. So, but CGI doesn't necessarily have to be there only to enhance. we can have fully CGI characters like in the Transformers movies, right?
Yeah, I
100%.
think that's fair. I think a lot of like, I do think it's a little bit more nuanced than Jason's, because I think it comes down to like, because overall it comes down to quality. If it looks good, nobody's gonna say anything, right? And
Yeah.
like,
Right.
but if it looks bad, of course we're gonna say something, you know. So I think that like ultimately, like we can talk about like where the line is, but I think a lot of it just depends on like, is it of quality? Like, if you're putting out something that looks terrible, of course, like the Black Panther final fight with Killmonger and T'Challa, it's going to be okay. That looks like garbage. But kind of like with Transformers, because I think at least for the first couple Transformers movies, you know, the Transformers look pretty dope, you know. So
Yeah.
like I
Not
think it just
even
depends on
the
like
beginning of the
quality.
Bumblebee movie with the War for Cybertron. It looked just like the 2013, or not even 2013, like the 2011 video game. Like
Mm-hmm.
the shooter, the third person shooter. It was like, oh my god, this looks just like how I imagined Transformers in my head as a kid. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's where some of these issues lie. Because you talk about that versus something like Fast and Furious 10, and it's like, oh, well, why, like, if you're gonna CGI this whole movie, why even have real actors in it in the first place?
Okay. And so
So
that is a perfect example that leads me into something I really, really want to talk about. Is we're saying that CGI is acceptable if it makes something look good, right? However,
Yeah.
one of my biggest pet peeves that's been happening very recently in film is the need to have a oneer or a completely one-shot action scene. And
Yeah.
lately, especially in Guardians 3 and even in The Flash, these oneers are done with entirely in CGI. Should that count? Does it make it better that it's a oneer, or is it an overuse of CGI?
I mean, it definitely, at least for me, like I'm not gonna treat it the same as like, say, like I'm trying to think of a one shot that I really like. I
Like the
know there's that
Daredevil
one.
fight scenes or anything like that?
Yes, something like that, or even the fight scene from Old Boy, you know,
Sure,
where it's
yeah.
like I'm not gonna treat it with the same level of difficulty or just like creativity that those scenes required, because like not to, because I feel like I don't want to make it sound like we're just like shitting on like, you know, what are what are
I
they,
am.
what are what would their title be? Because I don't want to make it sound like we're, because obviously they play a large role in making the
They're
movies that I
3D
like.
animators.
Yeah, they
They're
play.
3D animators.
Yeah, so the animators, they play a role in like making these movies good. But I think a lot of times, especially with something like The Flash, they're overworked, they're crunched, and they aren't given a lot of resources to make these
Sure,
even look
sure.
good. So that being said, it was like, I don't know, it's just like, yeah,
I'm not saying it doesn't look good. I mean, the Guardians 3 and the Flash one definitely look good. I mean, it's the
yeah,
best use of CGI in the film.
yeah,
However, it's very clear that it's CGI because a lot of the things that happen, the shots that happen, are impossible.
yeah,
And as soon as to
yeah,
me, as I realize that something's impossible in this one shot, I don't care anymore. I don't care how impressive it looks that it's all CGI and it looks
yeah.
live action. And if it's impossible, there's no point in showing off your ability at making a one shot scene.
Yeah, I definitely like. I think like I think this is another thing that works. Like it's nuanced, you know, it's complicated because like I said, I'm not going to treat it the same. Like I'm not going to view it the same as something like the scene in Old Boy. But I do think it shows like I do think if you're trying to communicate like a specific thing, you know, per se with like a one shot or trying to show like something, just trying to show something cool to your audience. I think there's value in that. Yeah, I think there's value in that to me at least. So I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't think there is value.
Mm.
I
Ali, do you have
I
anything to say,
I
Jason?
oh, I'll let you go first.
No, Jason, you go ahead.
I was gonna say I do think there's value in it, but I feel like there's less artistic merit in it when it's completely CGI because you lose, like I said, the spectacle of it. Like the thing about the one that made the first season of Daredevil Wonder and the Old Boy Wonder so special is that it's all real people doing it. It's real actors going from place to place, the camera panning, there's a director there. There's so many elements there that need to go perfect to make it work. And then you see something like the ones in the Guardians of the Galaxy, which are all CGI and the Flash, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, now what's special about the idea of the Wonder is gone.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
I think it's like that quality, you know, like what Chikara was saying earlier. Like if it looks good, then people won't say shit about it. But
If it looks bad, yeah.
yeah, if it looks bad, then it's called like I don't know, like
Doo-doo.
cartoonish doo doo, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Yeah, but
And
yeah, I think. Sorry.
I was just saying that all goes back to this kind of idea that something like the budget is
Yeah.
so entirely put into it because when somebody decides to stop spending money or decide to say, hey, this is all we're gonna do, then you get the terrible looking CGI or it's rushed, and that type of stuff is all very important.
The idea of we'll fix it in post.
Yeah, the idea of we'll fix it in post. Oh god, I hate the
Yeah,
idea
we'll
of we'll
fix it in
fix it in
post,
post.
man. That's all I'm gonna do. If I ever make a movie, dude, we're fixing all of them in post. I might not even film it, bro. I do have a question for you, Alex. So, like,
Sure.
if let's say like something like The Flash labeled itself as an animated movie with like live action elements, would that would that one shot scene would that have value now? Like if a like not even just The Flash, but if an animated like movie, TV show, whatever, did a one shot scene, would you give it value then? Just like because it's like in that genre, or is it still kind of like, well, whatever, you know?
That is a really good question. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would give it value. I just don't think I would give it as much value as a live action scene that is a oneer. And an example of that is, I mean, I know this is a live action scene, right? But in the
Yeah.
new Transformers movie, they also have a oneer, which is done entirely CGI because they're all Transformers and the environment's all fake and all of that. But
Yeah.
the way that it's executed, for as much as I like disagree with Michael Bay's filmmaking, he makes it feel like it's possible, and I give that a lot of value over
Did
something.
Michael Bay direct the Bumblebee movie?
No,
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 he directed the Rise
Rise
of
of
the
the Beast.
Transformers.
Oh, he directed Rise of the Beast?
Yep, came back.
Oh wow, I
Oh,
didn't
I
know
didn't
that.
even know that.
I thought somebody else did it.
I thought it was the same guy who did Bumblebee.
Am I incorrect? Let me look that up. But
Yeah, I know he produced it, but I don't know if he directed it.
But to kind of finish his point, or to disagree with his point morally, I think.
oh yeah, no, it was Stephen Cable Jr.
Okay, so Michael Bay just produced it.
I
Yes,
think so.
yes.
All right. What I was more thinking of is the idea that what makes it an animated version of a Warner kind of more better than something that's. Well, I feel like this. You go back to this idea of pure animation versus performance capture. So when something's performance captured over, and it's all redone later in CGI, I feel like obviously there's less because it's redone to make it look perfect. That's worse than something like a traditional animated movie or 3D animated movie like Across the Spider Verse, where there's somebody going in there hand placing all the elements. You get what I'm saying? So that is kind of like where I get into this idea of like, oh, okay, this looks better to me because this is somebody going in and hand placing all these elements here to make sure it all runs smoothly and perfectly versus something that's something like the Guardians of the Galaxy or Flash one where it might be all, you know, parts of this are performance captured on a blue screen in the middle of Atlanta and then we redo over it at some Chinese warehouse with people making 10 cents an hour. So
A very specific example.
yeah. Well, I think a lot of people use this as Thailand now that has lots of animation houses for higher animation houses, I think.
I did not know that. But I mean, even going back to the Transformers one, it's yes, they are hand placed, but the camera movement is what sells it really for me. They can have as many CGI elements as they need, I think. I mean, I'm not gonna say that. They can have CGI elements and entire characters can be CGI, but as long as the camera feels like it can actually exist and move within that environment, that's what I give the artistic merit to.
I don't know, man. I really is I think I mainly just disagree with the idea of just the premise of like fully CG animated scenes in the first place, because then it's like, why even include them?
No, I agree. I
Uh,
agree.
and kind of that for me is just so that's the idea of CGI is so destructive to the fundamental idea of filmmaking for me sometimes, but I can't even like abide by it.
I think for me, it's not necessarily fully CGI scenes. It's if they use CGI to recreate an element that looks real, specifically in like these wonder scenes where they put in digital replacements of these actors. That's where the CGI becomes too much.
Is it?
Yeah.
So do you mean like with Paul Walker and Fast and the Furious, like that type of stuff, or is it like another example?
Yeah, I mean,
That's almost more disrespectful than anything.
You thinking Fast
yeah.
7 was disrespectful?
Because like I believe in the idea of something like, if somebody has passed away, we need to just let them go. And I don't like this idea that, oh, we're never gonna let people die. We're just gonna re-CGI them, kind of like how this new Indiana Jones.
I think that Fast 7 let him go.
Yeah, I think there's a difference.
Well, no, I feel like they let him go, but I feel like they shouldn't have even included a body double with his CGI face over in the beginning.
Well, the body double was his brother.
Yeah, but I feel like it shouldn't have even been a thing in the first place. Like
just
that,
write him out for the rest of the movie. Oh, he's already gone home.
No, or just kill him off. Just legit kill him off.
How would you kill him off? How would you? Do you want them to show footage of the accident?
Yeah, you show for real recorded footage of the accident in the theater.
Oh my god!
But no, I think of this idea like James Earl Jones has sold his voice to Disney, so that they can forever use him as the voice of Darth Vader. I hate that idea. In fact, I hate the idea of Star Wars is still around. We need to be able to let things go. Like things have happened.
That, like things have to. I think things have to end at some point. I do agree with that. Like the notion that things should be able to end. I just think like specifically the Paul Walker example. I think that's something different. I think that's like I'm okay with that because I think it was done well. I think it was.
Yeah,
done,
no,
like,
I'm probably be over the top, but I feel like when you start completely CGIing people,
yeah, and that's
why
even
do
Alex, it? What's like the distinction for him and like those type of scenarios.
Yeah, I think that when you do CGI somebody, like use a digital double to stand in for somebody, I think that is too far. I think the camera has to feel real, and I think as much as the elements as possible have to be real. Yeah. And if elements can't be real, for the example of Transformers, where like you're not going to film real Transformers, I understand. That's why you're going to use the digital ones, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Why not? We need to build some real Mobile Suit Gundams in Japan.
I was thinking more. I was thinking more stop motion. Just someone gets their action figures out.
Honestly, that would almost be more cool.
A stop motion Transformer would kind of be fun.
Mm-hmm. And make it look like the old original anime, like all their G1 designs. I'd be down for that.
If they were using stop motion, would you consider that an animated movie?
I was just about to ask the same thing. Is stop motion animated? I'd say it is.
Yeah, I'd say it is.
Isle of Dogs and Fantastic Mr. Fox are both considered animated, right?
Yeah, they're animated because stop motion is literally just animate traditional 2D animation, but in just a 3D space,
Right.
Because you're still taking singular photos.
Right. I think for something to be live action, it has to be self-motivated. It can't be someone comes in, moves something, takes another picture.
Yeah, I agree with that idea.
Like, I don't know if this is good. Have y'all ever seen the movie Small Soldiers? It's like that movie where like, would that fall into like, is that movie stop motion?
That movie is stop motion.
Oh,
yeah.
That's with like the little like GI Joe.
Yeah, it's where the little soldier dudes fight the kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that's if I remember correctly, it was done all stop motion. Okay. I need to let me look it up. I'll look it up right now.
I think it came out in '98. That's crazy.
That was a good movie.
Yeah,
Alex, you need to watch that.
Okay, I'll put on my list.
It's on Pluto currently. Watch. It is good. I do like Small Soldiers, but like I'm trying to think about that movie where we're talking about like not just stop motion, but kind of like kind of like how it comes, like I guess the scene and it's in and of itself, like where like I guess that point is for us or whatever.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Okay. All right. Well, we have reached an hour and 5 minutes. Is there anything else anybody wants to say, or should we wrap it up here?
Watch Small Soldiers.
Watch Small Soldiers. That's what your homework is for next week. All of the viewers.
And, if you're
Kirsten
thinking
Dunst
about,
is in it.
yeah, Kirsten Dunst is in it. If you're thinking about going to the theaters to watch Flash, just stop.
Wait till it comes to HBO.
Don't even watch it when it comes to Max. Don't even do that. Just don't ever see it.
I know Jason answered this, but Alex, amongst the other DC movies, where is this for you? Where is this?
Where does this rank?
Not even rank, just well, I guess ranking. But yeah.
It's below Black Adam, and it's above Birds of Prey.
Okay.
It's above Wonder Woman 1984.
Okay.
It's below Aquaman. I think that
sounds like to me that Alex is sexist. Is what it sounds like to me.
No, he didn't say the first Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah, Wonder Woman's like top 3. It goes Man of Steel, the first Wonder Woman, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Next week we should talk about Zack Snyder's movies so I can say why they're all bad.
Next week I would love to talk about Zack Snyder. Is there anything else you want to talk about next week? Ali, Jason?
I would love to talk about Zack Snyder and why he's a visionary, and we need to bring back
these
the
guys.
Snyderverse.
Okay, all right.
You know what? That's my homework. I need to watch those movies.
Dude, do not watch I have not seen the 4-Hour Justice League, and I refuse to. Don't watch it. It's not necessary.
Bro, watch Man of Steel. Watch Batman v Superman, the ultimate cut.
Oh my
not
God.
the original
Okay.
cut.
No.
Just watch.
All you gotta watch is 300, Man of Steel, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Justice is Gray.
You can.
Okay.
If you want, but it's really bad.
And then you need to somehow acquire me the full reel of his new movie that hasn't been released yet. And we need to watch that. We need to watch it live on Twitch.
What's it called? Rebel Moon.
Rebel Moon.
It's his version of Star Wars, which I'm really excited for.
I'm not. It looks good. It looks
better than the
cinematography looks like Denis Villeneuve in terms of like Dune or Blade Runner, but it's still Zack Snyder, and so
yeah. So it probably won't be good or have any character development or even follow.
You take that back. You take that back. You take that back. You take that back. Everybody, your homework is to watch Watchmen tonight.
No,
Watchmen.
He doesn't have to watch Watchmen.
Yeah.
Ali, is there anything you want to talk about next week? Any burning things on your mind?
There's nothing burning in my mind right now.
Okay, well,
Ooh, I want him to talk about Avatar.
You want to talk about Avatar?
Avatar?
All to talk about
The Last
Avatar.
Airbender?
Yeah.
Okay, you can talk about Last Airbender. I'm good to talk about Dave Filoni any day.
Oh my god. But yeah,
okay.
That's all I got.
All right, are we ready to end the podcast?
Yeah, sure.
Let's end it.
Let's end it. All right, thank you everybody for listening. This is episode 2 of Our Thoughts on This. Today we talked about The Flash and where the line of CGI and animation versus live action should be drawn, how much is too much. Tune in next week where we're going to talk about Zack Snyder and I guess Avatar: The Last Airbender. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.